Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being. Welcome back to the Intuitive Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli. And today I have Susan Gold with us. She has such an amazing story. She's got some really cool things that have happened in her life, and she's graciously come on here to share with us. So welcome to the show, Susan.
Hey, Alicia, I'm so happy to be here. And wow, who knew I'd be on an intuitive related podcast? Knew I was intuitive as a kid. I was even telepathic as a kid, but I shoved that under the carpet really quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing how as we go through life, we're like, wow, we have all these really cool gifts. We have all these really cool insights that, of course, were shoved down. Take us a little bit, speaking of that, take us a little bit back through your story. I know you had kind of an intense childhood. Take us back from that and how you got to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So I grew up in a really chaotic household. I mean, there was no flat level platform of stability. I mean, my parents absolutely were doing the best they could, but they came from abusive, messed up lineage. And so they were bringing their dramas to the table, and it was hurt and abused children, raising hurt and abused children. And I knew I needed to get out of there, but I knew I would make it out of there. I just had to keep a focus. And my role was to break up the fights between my parents, which was a tough way to be. And my memories go way back. Like some people are blacked out till 4 or 5. Oh, I remember 18 months in that playpen for too long. And when I was finally attended to, it wasn't with a lot of love. So I used to watch Barbara Walters on my beanbag chair in the basement. And I was like, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to be like Barbara Walters. Well, I left that family household at 17. It was the day after I graduated high school. And by 19, I was in New York City doing arts management internships from college. And at 21, I went back and got a big glitzy job with this large global talent agency that represented every A-list celebrity imaginable. And I was so excited, but you didn't make a lot of money, Alicia. So I did a side hustle, which back then, wasn't really chic, but I was training people privately in their homes. And I got a call from the firm that I worked with. Hey, can you go to Barbara Walters' apartment tomorrow at 7?
What?
Yeah, right. Talk about it. Total manifestation all the way along. I didn't understand my intuitive capability. I didn't understand that I was a super empath, mopping up that toxic energy that my parents were like ladling out in sheaths. And that really served me. So I rang Barbara's doorbell one day and she said, Susan, get in here. What's going on with you? And she was intuitive as heck. And I didn't let anybody know anything, poker face all the time, especially with clients. Within 2 minutes, she got it out of me. I had been sexually harassed in the workplace the day before. And she said, I'm coming to work with you and we're going to confront this man together. And I'm like, Barbara, I'm going to be okay. But so later that same day, I confronted my boss and he said, do you have everything you need? And like, yeah. And he goes, great, you're fired. And Alicia, I was like newly sober. I had just extricated myself from an abusive relationship where the man held the purse strings and I had maybe 2 months cash in the bank. And Barbara said, why don't you come work for my fiance? He's running this film distribution company. It'd be a great gig. And I'm like, Barbara, thank you so much. I can't be an admin any longer. Like, I cannot do it. And I knew intuitively I couldn't continue to follow this path. I had to go out on my own. So I came up with this brainiac idea. I was going to match celebrities with brands because it was similar to what I was doing as an agent's assistant at the time. And I was matched with Donnie Deutsch, who is now, he's like a show type TV host and he's a bit of an icon and an entrepreneur. But then he was running his dad's ad agency and he wanted Andy Warhol, the modern artist who did the Campbell soup can in Maryland. He wanted him to endorse his Pontiac dealers. And he said, you think you can get them? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll try. So back then you had to bring up the factory. You couldn't just send a text or an email. You could send an email, but I really didn't think they would listen. So they wouldn't answer the phone. So I rode the subway down to the factory and I knocked on the door, and Fred, Andy's manager, answered, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I told him why I was there. And he said, "Okay, come back tomorrow, same time. I'll let you talk to Andy." So I was like, okay, maybe there's hope here. Like, I'm so willing to make this deal. I'll go to any lengths, because I had to get out of what I was doing. And I didn't want to go back into this abusive relationship. So I went the next day, and the doors to Andy's studio opened and it was dark. And I thought, great. Now what's going to happen to me in a darkened room? But in I went, and there was Andy with this platinum hair going 70 different directions. And he was scribbling, and there's 3 dogs running around the studio, those pugs, with the smushed up faces. He could care less why I was there, what I was yammering on about. He didn't make any eye contact, didn't acknowledge me, but I could feel that love, that connection he had with these dogs. And I could also sense in my body how isolated he was and how much he wanted recognition. And so finally, he looked up at me and he said, "Okay, now really, why should I do this?" And I was like, that wave came through my chest and it just came out of my mouth. "Because you can have the dogs in the shot with you." Ooh. And he's like, "Okay, I'll do it." So that started my career. I was known for matching celebrities to brands, and that led me into television and film. So I was able to use that empathic, intuitive ability, and I was able to note it. And it got clearer as I got more sober, because that was my bottom line. The same red flags that I saw in my home, abusive relationships and fights and all that stuff that I said I would never do was coming up in my life. So I had to address that. And for me, the main platform was I had to be sober, because if I wasn't dealing with my own reality. And that just really opened the door. But then I shut it back down again because I wanted to fit in with the system. So, I was really busy, like, becoming this template of what sobriety was supposed to be. And ultimately, yeah, it was good to have that experience, but it didn't lead me to my authentic gifts. I sort of was still working from the outside in. I didn't believe that my strengths were inside me. I felt like my strengths came because I did that deal for Hearst and they were so happy. And, now I'm doing this deal for MTV and it's really going well. And now I attracted this great guy, it was always outside of me. So I was putting a deal together for 2 big corporate entities that were merging. And my responsibility was bringing these huge musical acts to their corporate opening party. And what it was a replication of the position I played within my parents. I was bringing 2 parties together.
Wow.
And it got a little inflammatory, and it triggered so much PTSD and trauma that I literally during the deal started splitting out of my body, and I could feel it, and I became very suicidal. And I had trouble with suicidal ideation. I mean, my first instance was 6 years old. I remember it very clearly, but I won't go into that now. And my friends around me noticed, and they sent me off to a rehab. I was 4 years clean. It was my first time in rehab because I was so codependent. And that's where I learned how to treat and work with my clinical depression. And I had sort of a 10-year period working with that. And I did use the medication off and on for 10 years until I really learned about myself and how to work with it and the signs so I could get off the elevator a little sooner than crashing down into that place of just, total suicidal, ideation. And it was a really great, miraculous movement. And I gained a lot of sense of self. But it wasn't ultimately the sense of self. I needed to really use my gifts. Here I was, still, successful on the outside. I started producing for television and film. I mean, working with all the household names that everybody's so curious about. And I was really fortunate, but I still didn't have myself. So I got a call from a friend who was running a show in LA. And she's like, "We need you out here." And I said, "Okay, I'll go." So I dropped everything in New York. I just basically left and moved to LA for this great job opportunity. Really what I was moving to LA for.
Like there's more opportunity coming.
It was to meet my greatest guru. who would become my ex-husband. And people think that's so odd that I see him that way, but that's part of my psychic ability. What can I say? This man, I thought, was my match. I mean, just said all the right things. We were in related industries and came from the same state. And I was so hungry still looking on the outside for that approval, and so fearful of the abandonment that there was no way that I could really go inside. And I was a longtime meditator. I was an endurance athlete. Like, it looked really rosy. So this was the perfect storm, Alicia. Like 15 years into it, I woke up hard. I saw what I was losing. I saw how my energy was draining. I saw what I gave away of self. And I had a young son with this man, and I didn't want that to be his example, but I didn't want my marriage to burn either, because I'd been through that as a kid with my own family, and I wasn't going to let that happen. But became very clear it was not going to work. And we were trying to work things out in mediation. And I thought we finally were. Like, we were at the last point of this negotiation. And I thought, oh, my marriage is saved. Yay. I don't have to go through this excruciating experience of a marriage dissolving. And he crossed his arms and his eyes went in those nefarious slits. And he said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing for divorce. And again, that great voice of intuition came in. It comes over my right shoulder and in through my heart for me. And it said, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And I knew, okay, this is finally it. This perfect storm, all the things that I've been challenged with up to this point, they're all coming in here, and I'm going to move through them in this experience. And we went back to the same home I had bought and maintained for our family. And he wouldn't move out of the master. So I carried a mattress into our garage in a partial conversion. And I stayed there for the calendar year it took to experience this separation and divorce from this man, and held no contact because, in my opinion, he was an alleged narcissist. And again, I knew, people told me that if I engaged, I was just going to go right back into that dance. And I was solely determined, because I knew this was the point. This was the point of soul evolution. I was either going to stay in this dance and be working the third shift at Walmart, or I was going to step up to my true power, which I always knew was in there. It's always like, you don't really need to do this. It's cheaper if you just keep your maid on rather than pay for this husband. But who wants to listen to that stuff and really grow as a soul? But I give myself a lot of credit. I stepped up and I just pretended that little conversion in the garage was my monastery. And within a year, I wrote him that 6-figure check, and off he went to his next victim. And in I came to a real path, an authentic path, finally understanding that it all came from in here, not out there. Even every time I was tempted to go out there, I could recognize it. And I go right into my heart and check in. Okay, what do we want to do today? How are we going to create the next miracle together? Because I didn't know what was going to happen and how I was going to keep our son in the home that he grew up in. The miracles just kept happening once I was able to tap into my own value and my own esteem and my own worth. And fast forward, I kept heeding this call of this inner voice. Yeah, LA's not for you. Yeah, that 5G tower they just put up on your neighbor's corner, your dog's going a little wild at a certain time. You may want to check out other places. And I was led to like this really rural in Northwest Montana. I can walk to Canada now. It's like 4 miles away. And I finished the memoir. That's the story of the trajectory that takes everybody through the chaotic upbringing, the entertainment industry, magic, and then facing the clinical depression and ultimately the narcissistic abuse. So other people can understand that there is a path for them, that they can get rid of all this gorilla glue and sticky tape that's around our hearts and get in touch with their natural gifts that they can come into, so they can really have the sovereignty and the freedom that we're meant to, right? And that's what I help other people with now. And that ability, that intuitive ability, the veils come off simply. Well, certainly since 2020. I mean, the ruse is like coming off in spades. And so is my connection to my ability.
Yes, the bills are open.
I don't doubt it anymore. When I hear it inside and I feel it outside, I can't help but express it. And people move through their stuff like fast because wow, this has been here all the time. As I learned from, I think I did about 150 podcast guest episodes when my book was first published. It's called Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And what I learned from conversations about that is it wasn't just toxicity in my ancestral line and in my immediate family.
Yeah.
It was the toxicity that I experienced growing up. Like I remember being in that church pew at 7 or 8, just thinking, don't you dare tell me I need a broker to talk to Source. I talk to Source in my backyard anytime I want to talk to Source, and I won't even call it an education. I'll call it in schooling and in being trained how to think. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it that way. I don't believe in that. And so it's really woken me up to the toxic systems that we all have marinated in and are now seeing fall. And so that comes into it too. And I know you want to talk because I'm just going blah, blah, blah.
No,
blah,
you're
blah.
good. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like so many lessons inside of what you just said. I'm like, this lesson and this lesson, this lesson and this lesson. It's like, and it's amazing how you've gone from one thing, but it's like these little lesson opportunities opened up at the right time when you needed them and you were willing to receive it in. Because think about it, if you hadn't gone through, even after you had your sobriety, you went through sobriety or in sobriety, then you went to rehab. If you hadn't did all that for yourself, getting through, the marriage, getting through the divorce, getting out there, it's like the little baby steps that people take, and people think that like I'm gonna be healed over time. It's like no, you're missing the whole point. So it's like you sat back and you watched and you went through all these lessons through the hard and struggles and the hard times for your soul's purpose, obviously, to get to that. But the most amazing thing is your intuition guided you through all of those little lessons and you listened to it. And it's so amazing. Like, it amazes me, like when we start to, the things that are going to come up, we have lessons learned, we're going to learn them. It's regardless. Like we can either be very easily learning them through with the universe. It's like, okay, cool. Let's, I've learned this. Or it's going to be like, no. And it's going to drill it into us until we finally get it. So I feel like that was two of the biggest takeaways from, your story, which is fabulous. And I was going to say, if you don't have a book on this, you absolutely need to. And I'm so glad you do, because I'm going to go pick it up and read it. I love that.
You're so gracious. Yeah, sometimes I think the writing of the book, even though I had done so much work, I mean, talk therapy, it's helpful. It's helpful to lay down the storyline. Absolutely. But in my experience, after 25 years of that, I came around to the same circle where I started. A different texture and tone, but similar. It wasn't really until I went somatically, like into my body, because I'm like you. I hold it in my body. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in other people's bodies. Like I'll tell you right now, your pain in your right shoulder is because of blah, blah, blah. And I'm not a medical intuitive, although people would love me to be, but it's all part of that process. And writing the book really brought those pieces out of the compartments again, and really writing it down really helped in the exorcism, so to speak, because I'm pretty happy. And for what I've really experienced, people don't understand, like, why are you smiling?
Yeah, you have like this amazing energy with it. And I feel that because that's actually I'm going through right now, right? Rewriting my book. And it's like all these wounds that I have, not really banded. I've did some surgery on them and they were good. Now it's like you got to rip them back open again to get back into the feeling, the thoughts, and like you're basically reliving the trauma again. And I do have a therapist for people, listeners, that help me walk me through this. I'm not doing this on my own. I tried. I was like, no. But as you're going like through all this, it's really hard. It's a really tough thing. And people they go, oh, you just write down your thoughts. No, you're having to relive all this stuff and the emotions behind it. And it's like an extra layer of healing. And so when you get it on paper and you look at it, and after, especially coming, like you said, full circle around to it, and you're like, okay, well, I've dealt with this. I feel pretty healed on this. And then you're like, whoa, I'm opening this back up again. We're going to do even better surgery on it this time. So I feel totally feel into that. And I commend you. And that's amazing. I commend people who do that because it's a tough process to to write something, especially getting your personal issues out there onto paper, your thoughts and the way that it made you feel, and knowing that you got to go back and almost re-heal again from it.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. But 2 weeks before the book was to be published, my publisher called and said, "Oh, by the way, we're changing the title," because I felt like the process of my life has been a magical illumination, transforming childhood trauma into adult freedom. And she said, "Oh no, we're calling it Toxic Family." I was like, "Oh my God." And I love my family, believe it or not. Like, there's reasons I might
Yeah.
not love my family, but having the recovery and understanding their history and what they were dealing with, what they came to the table with, oh my gosh, I was placed perfectly to set me up to the issues I wanted to move through in this lifetime. And you don't look at it that way, especially early on. But really in that divorce experience, everything shifted. I was like, I could clearly see that earth was some kind of bizarre classroom and not for the faint of heart, and maybe like straight up one of the deepest ghettos of the universe. But here I was having these challenges, and to really see it as, wow, well, I can shift this. I can get through this and I can get to a better place. And each time I've gone through it, although painful, I've gotten to a better place. Hooray.
I love it. And I'm so glad, because now you're here.
And I really commend you to have this platform
Oh,
for
thank you.
people to share. I mean, I went back to your earliest episode this morning, and the gentleman's name was Liam. You guys go back, find Liam. It's
It's a
such a great
Yeah.
episode. Yeah. And what he delivers and how you're expanding our reality and our ability to connect with what's real rather than what is manufactured and spoon fed to us. We are much more than we've been ever led to believe.
Yeah.
Ever.
It kind of, so you said we got to get out of those systems. We have to get into our true, I call self, who we truly are, and get back into that intuitive self, whoever inside of us, to find that. And when you do discover that, there's no going back. You're never going to go back to this. You may try to go back to those same systems. You may try to go back, but it's never going to be the same. You're going to be totally even more miserable. So you're going to pull yourself back out because you know how to do that.
You are exactly right.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So tell our listeners, what tips and advice do you have for people who are looking to, of course, this intuitive revolution? Most of our listeners probably have a little bit, they're at least intuitive, inquisitive. I'll put it that way. Yeah. What are some tips that, I have my ways that I kind of started tapping into my intuition, but how did you start to trust into, let that guide your entire life?
Yeah, I had so many drags through the mud. I'm a Scorpio, so I go down in that ash and then I revive. I think I'll come back as a Capricorn or something, I'm not sure. But yeah, finding the trust, but also finding the respect for your own ability within. I didn't find that until that final piece of moving through alleged narcissistic abuse. And a lot of us that are empathic and intuitive and do have that ability, we're so banged up from early on, like coming in and learning how this new system here works and then bowing down to the malignancy. So we may be carrying some of that with us, and we really need to clear that out. Otherwise, we're sort of like coming from a higher hoop place rather than a grounded place from within my heart. And this is what I know to be true. And it's also, for me, it was incorporating the heart with the mind, because that dirty word mindset that's thrown around so much, I'd like to kick that to the curb. It's like so painful to me. I mean, it's great. Yes, we have brilliant minds. We should use them, but they shouldn't be the tools leading us. We really need the magic of that heart, regardless of how much recovery we have or knowledge we've gained. And then the other piece for me, respectfully to everybody's gifts, there was a period where I was really addicted to what the tarot reader said, to what the astrologer said, to what the new channeler said, to what, all those cacophony of noises.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Take what you like and leave the rest. When you find yourself dependent on it, step away and step back in, because you are the sovereign being of you. And this is part of what we've given away so gladly and kind of why we're in this nasty trench we're in right now, because we got to drop that, come back in, and then feel the real freedom. So
Yeah. I think these people have this magical, which people do have gifts. I mean, I'm not dissing
yeah,
that. People have stronger gifts than others in certain areas, but we all have the same intuitive gifts. And so it doesn't make anyone who can, I'm going to say, I don't like the predict the future stuff because I think that's just bull. I'm going to call that out. Like I don't think we can go predict the future because we can always rewrite the future.
mm-hmm.
But they think people who have more psychic abilities, or they have intuition, they have good insight on things, that they have this extreme gift that we all don't have. And like, we all have that gift inside of us. They just trust themselves. I'm talking about I guess you call psychics or a good intuitive person, trust themselves. They don't, so that's really to me, the key is to trust that insight. They trust that insight that we all have. And it doesn't make them any more special or anybody else that you should listen to. Although sometimes it does, especially if you got clouded over, sometimes, having that perspective does help to come in. But when you learn to, I don't go see psychics, I don't go see tarot readings. If I want to do, I can do it on myself and call it my own spirits and guides, and it's intuitive to me where it feels good. So that's kind of the way I think that it's supposed to be with it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And again, it's that for me, it's going outside to look at for what's already within. And sometimes I need that kind of grounding just to get a footing.
Yeah.
So many times now I come away and I'm like, yeah, I know that. I can feel that. I know your viewers have the same experience. You go outside for the knowledge and then you go, yeah, I know that. I can feel that inside me. I just didn't know how to put it into words exactly.
Sometimes you need that extra, I've had things happen where it's personally where I'm like, I don't really know. It's like, I know, but I don't want to believe it. I don't want to doubt myself. And so you have that same, like, that's why I think signs come into the perfect play. Usually for me, like, oh, there's a sign. I'm like, oh, thanks. And this confirmation, because we're human beings. We're in a human experience, human world. We're going to doubt. That's just our human emotions. And so having that doubt, sometimes having that third hand knowledge to reaffirm what you already know is can be extremely powerful, especially if you're going through tough times or going through just different phases of your life. I think it's super powerful. But I think the ultimate key is to come back to your own sovereignty, coming back to your own self, your own intuition, your own worth, everything inside of that, coming back to yourself and trusting that and just knowing that the guide. And I always tell people too, it's like, well, I didn't get what I wanted. That doesn't matter, that you got what you needed. It's not a matter of, it's like, oh, I trust my intuition, but it got me in this situation. Well, maybe that situation is what you needed at the time to get to the lesson, to get to something even bigger and brighter and better. And people don't realize that. They think because they trying to control the process and they wanted this one thing and they want it to be the certain way, that they don't trust their intuition. So I've come across people like that. So just we want listeners to know that that's not the key, that there's so many lessons in life and your intuition won't guide you into a place you do not need to be if you listen to it correctly. Yeah.
There you go. So I know we're coming to a close, but before we leave, I just want to offer your viewers, if they're interested and you feel any kind of connection, you're welcome to visit susangold.us, because I'd love to give you a free grounding activation. So many of us with our intuitive gifts here, we're flying up here. We're not grounded into our bodies. It happens to me. So you're welcome to do a grounding activation with me. Just schedule it on susangold.us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. And all her information will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming on here, sharing your amazing story. How much you've grown and how much you're just a shining light to people. And I just want to thank you again for coming on here and sharing and giving all your knowledge.
And thank you. And thank your listeners too.